The room that wasn't there. It was supposed to be a fresh start. Claire had been through a rough couple of years. Losing her job, a bad breakup, and her mother's passing all in the span of 18 months. So when she stumbled upon a deal for a cozy, old-fashioned apartment downtown, she jumped at it. The rent was cheap, the location was perfect, and the landlord seemed eager to have her. The apartment was small but charming, with polished wood floors and large windows that let in plenty of light. Claire spent the first weekend unpacking, arranging her books on the shelves, and hanging up her favorite artwork. For the first time in a long time, things felt right. On Sunday night, after finishing her unpacking, Claire decided to celebrate her new beginning with a glass of wine. She curled up on the couch, flipping through a magazine, when she noticed something odd. Across the living room, one of the walls looked different. It wasn't an obvious change, just a slight discoloration, like the paint didn't quite match the rest of the room. Curious, Claire walked over and ran her fingers along the wall. The texture felt strange, smooth and cool, unlike the rest of the slightly worn plaster. She tapped it lightly, and the sound it made was hollow. "Weird," she muttered, brushing it off as old building quirks. The next day, Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. She stood in front of the wall, examining it again. The odd discoloration seemed larger now, the difference more pronounced. She grabbed a flashlight and shone it against the surface. That's when she noticed it. A faint seam running vertically along the wall, like the outline of a door. Her heart raced. A hidden door? She felt like a character in a mystery novel. She pressed her ear against it but heard nothing. The landlord hadn't mentioned anything about extra storage or secret compartments, but she figured it wouldn't hurt to ask. Later that afternoon, she called him. "Hey, Mr. Wilkes, quick question. Is there some kind of hidden door or room in the apartment?" One of the walls looked strange. There was a long pause on the other end. "A door," Mr. Wilkes finally said, his voice strained. "Yeah, in the living room. It's probably nothing, but—" "It's nothing," he interrupted quickly. "Just old construction. These buildings settle over time. Don't worry about it." His tone sent a shiver down her spine. "Okay, if you're sure." "I am," he said firmly. "Don't try to open it." The line went dead before she could respond. Claire stared at her phone, unease creeping in. If it was nothing, why was he so adamant? And why had he told her not to open it? The warning only made her more determined. She grabbed a butter knife from the kitchen and used it to pry along the seam in the wall. After a few minutes of scraping, the faint outline gave way, revealing a hidden door. It had no handle, just a small indentation where one might have been. Claire pushed against it, and with some effort it creaked open. A cold, damp breeze wafted out, carrying the scent of mildew and something metallic. Her flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing a narrow staircase leading downward. "This isn't possible," she whispered. Her apartment was on the 3rd floor. Against her better judgment, Claire descended the stairs. The air grew colder with every step, the walls narrowing until she had to squeeze through. At the bottom was a small, dimly lit room. The walls were lined with old photographs, their edges yellowed and curling. A single chair sat in the center of the room, facing a cracked mirror mounted on the far wall. Claire approached one of the photos, her breath catching in her throat. It was her, sitting on the couch in her apartment, holding the same glass of wine she'd had the night before. She grabbed another photo. This one showed her sleeping in bed, her face peaceful, the blanket pulled up to her chin. Panic gripped her. Someone had been in her apartment, watching her, taking pictures. She turned to run, but the mirror caught her eye. Something moved in the reflection, something that wasn't her. She froze, her heart pounding. In the mirror, a figure stood behind her. It was faint, shadowy, its features indistinct. Slowly, she turned, but the room was empty. When she looked back at the mirror, the figure was closer, its hollow eyes fixed on hers. "Get out," it whispered. Claire didn't need to be told twice. She bolted up the stairs, slamming the hidden door shut behind her. Her hands shook as she pushed a bookshelf in front of it, barricading the entrance. She called the landlord again, her voice trembling. "What is that room?" she demanded. "What's down there?" Mr. Wilkes sighed heavily. "You opened it, didn't you?" "What is it?" she shouted. It's not part of this world," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "That room isn't supposed to exist. I don't know how it got there, but it's connected to something else. Something wrong." Claire didn't sleep that night. She stayed in the living room, flashlight clutched in her hand, her eyes darting to the barricaded door every few minutes. The next morning, she packed a bag and left. She didn't care about breaking her lease or losing her deposit. She just wanted to get as far away as possible. But as she drove out of the city, her phone buzzed. It was a text from her own number. "You can't leave. The room is already with you." Thanks for stepping into the unknown with us. If this story gave you chills, hit that like button, drop a comment with your favorite twist, and don't forget to subscribe, because the best stories always have another chapter waiting. See you in the shadows.